DevOps Dispatch presents Voices from the Industry.
These are not paid actors.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm Barton George, and I'm here with.
Kat Cosgrove.
See, you got that one right. We're off to a good start. And I'm here from Austin, Texas, and you are in?
Edinburgh.
Okay, but wait, which Edinburgh?
The one in Scotland. The one that
Right,
matters.
So the one in, actually, I was just checking this out. The one in Texas doesn't have the H, so it's pronounced Edinburgh.
So it is Edinburgh. Okay.
Yeah, and it's about 100,000 people, and it's right down near the Mexican border. So who knew? But we're just to correct this, you're in Scotland, not near the Mexican border.
Correct.
So you just got back from KubeCon.
I sure did.
Yeah, in fact, I saw the picture online to prove it. You with a microphone, a couple of folks on stage, and a cat in a box with a little big Kubernetes wheel on that. And in fact, to ask you more, we've got a friend. We've got a sock puppet here to talk to you today, Kat. Hi, can you tell us about what it means to be a release lead? All right, well, enough of that. Pets.com. So tell me about, so we're going to talk today about what it means to be a release lead, and then explain to all of us about what a release is and all about how it looks pretty onerous and pretty involved, and looks like you've been doing this a while. And I was going to say you're still standing, but you're still sitting. So, well, why don't we start with KubeCon? What happened there?
At KubeCon,
how was Paris?
Paris was beautiful, as always. The weather was lovely. It was around 18 Celsius the whole time and sunny.
Is that like 74?
Yeah, it was nice. It was, low 70s and comfy. Got some good shopping done. The conference was great. It was very, very crowded. I had two talks. One was a fun talk. We were using Dungeons and Dragons to teach about Kubernetes security. We actually played Dungeons and Dragons on stage, which is cool. Both stressful and fun, because that means there's very little prep we can do for the talk, because we are actually playing. So we have
is it true you're a 7th level cleric?
No, that is not true, actually, though there is a grave cleric in my party. I play a warlock, and my patron is the users. If anybody listening knows anything about Dungeons and Dragons.
I don't. I had a friend who was a 7th level cleric. That's all I remember. So I just threw that in to look like I knew.
No, warlocks get their powers from whoever they've signed some kind of contract with. Whether it's like a Cambion or the Fae, or there's like an otherworldly being that's basically the D&D equivalent of Cthulhu.
I'm just nodding my head. I have no idea what this is, but yes.
Don't worry about it. It's dorky. Right. But my second talk was...
You were doing that talk, right?
I was doing that talk. And that was fun. We had something like 1,300 people registered for it, which was...
Zoinks.
Intense. They could not all fit in the room. So unfortunately, we didn't get an audience of 1,300. The room was too small. But my first talk was actually on behalf of SIG Release. The Kubernetes project is made up of SIGs, special interest groups, that are responsible for different aspects of Kubernetes, whether that be like technical aspects, like building the networking components for Kubernetes, or slightly more practical aspects like SIG Release, which is the process of actually releasing Kubernetes. And in my talk on behalf of SIG Release, I announced the release theme for 130. The release lead always gets to name the release and choose a logo. And mine is
steal your thunder.
Mine is Kubernetes.
That was what I was going to guess. Before I saw the thing online, I said, I bet it's Kubernetes. Okay, so do tell.
Yeah. Well, this is actually, it is a joke. I made a joke on Twitter 3 years ago, and some change, and later privately, like with friends, threatened to call the release Kubernetes if I was ever allowed to lead a release. And at the time, I wasn't even on the release team, so this was like really a long shot. I didn't think I'd ever lead a release. But then I did get to lead a release, so I had to
stuck with it.
Yeah, I had to commit to the bit. I made this threat years ago, and I had to commit to it. So it is Kubernetes. The art for the logo was done by my Twitter friend Kefi Mochi, who's a very talented software engineer / artist. She's very cool. So I
It's got that anime big eyes. I'm looking at it. Or whoever used to do those sad eyes with on the big kids. Although those were haunting. This looks cute.
Yeah.
So cat in a box. Oh wait, it's kind of like a cat in a box.
Yeah,
wait a minute.
It is.
Oh my gosh, this is all coming around full circle. It's all making sense. So we digress. You're giving a talk on SIG release, and you were talking about having different groups. I just went on last night and was looking at on the ginormous Kubernetes enhancement proposal. I'm sorry, not about that. I'm getting ahead of the story. Enhancement tracking. And there was, when I looked under SIG, they had things like node, network, storage. So are there also compute types that are there?
No, those don't get their own SIGs. Those would go under SIG architecture, maybe.
Okay.
But no, the SIGs are a little bit more broad than that. Sometimes you do get like specific ones, like there's a SIG Windows. For instance, there's a SIG cloud infra, but no, they're usually pretty broad. We do have some that aren't related directly to like building Kubernetes. Like I said, there's SIG release. There's also SIG docs, which is responsible for writing and managing the Kubernetes documentation, both in English and through sub-projects for different localizations. There's also SIG Kubernetes Infra, which is responsible for maintaining our own infrastructure. And it's fun because if you go look at the Slack channel for SIG K8s Infra, you can see what our cloud bills are each month. And it is astronomical.
So who pays for that, or who, does that come from a central pot, or where does that come from?
It depends. So we have credits with Azure and AWS. We have not chewed through all of our AWS credits yet, I think. We have chewed through our GCP credits. So we are paying our own GCP bill, but that is the CNCS problem to pay for.
Okay, so they pick up the bill. Yeah, because it'd be horrible if you got to like week 13 and all of a sudden they pulled the plug and
shut her down.
It's been a good release so far. I think it's a good time to pause. So we were giving the SIG talk. If we take a step back with the release, they come up. Well, just tell us about the cadence, how long they are, and from a high level, what all they encompass, and then I can ask some other questions.
So we release 3 times a year. We used to release 4 times a year, but we switched to 3 2.5, 3 years ago now. And it's a little bit easier to manage, but each cycle is 14 to 16 weeks long, depending on the release schedule that the release lead sets. My cycle is 16 weeks long. That is a decision I made to accommodate for KubeCon being very, very early in the release cycle this time. Since it was earlier in the year, I needed to shuffle things around and stretch the timeline at the end a little bit. But
so you do have that freedom to do that. It's not as if it's a set release and it goes. And so I was looking last night and it said there week 15, April 17th is when it's released. Does that still hold? Or are you able to move that?
I can move that if something goes wrong. So it's not unheard of. It happens semi-regularly. If usually a cause is there is a security patch coming down from upstream Go and we don't know what's in it. And if it lands like Monday, our releases are usually on a Wednesday. If that Go update lands on a Monday, we really want to let an upstream Go update soak for like a minimum of 2 days. So at that point, we would delay by a week. But the release day is a moving target. It's aspirational. We don't have to hit it. It's not like I'm not in trouble if I have to delay the release.
You don't get your bonus if you hit it?
Well, it's a volunteer thing, so I'm not getting paid anyway. They pay me in a t-shirt. I get a singular t-shirt.
But not socks. I've got socks. Oh, well.
I don't have any socks.
And that sucks. Okay. Anyway, so we've got the release where you just had docs freeze. Is that correct?
We did. We just had docs freeze and test freeze. And this was the first cycle we've had a docs freeze. That's a new phase in the release process. Before that, we had the last deadline for docs was called PRs ready to merge. And people treated that deadline as if it was soft. So it was pretty typical for people to just like ignore us and show up with their docs a week later. However, having documentation when a KEP includes user-facing changes
in a second, we'll get back to what a KEP is.
Yes, I'll explain what a KEP is after that. Is mandatory. If you have user-facing changes, you must have documentation. That is not optional. So what I did was I changed it to a docs freeze to act more like the code freeze and the enhancement freeze deadlines, where if you know you're going to miss it, you have to file an exception request. You have to ask the release team for permission to be late. You have to justify it. You have to ask for like a number of days in that extension. And if you don't do that, or if you do and you don't meet your extended deadline, we pull your KEP from the release. So in order to accommodate that, the docs deadline is a little bit earlier in the release cycle than it was before, because I can't pull code from the release like a week before the release date, but I can pull it like 3 or 4 weeks before the release date.
So is that, and I'm looking at the chart, but you've got status, track for code freeze, removed from milestone, at risk for docs freeze, deferred. So if what would each of those be, and which one, if you wanted to pull it, that would be, I guess, removed from milestone, or what would that be?
Yes. So the way it would go is at risk for docs freeze. If it looks like within the week before docs freeze, there's very little activity, or the owner isn't being responsive, or we think we're going to have trouble getting reviewers, we'll track it as at risk for docs freeze. And that is just kind of a red flag that the docs subteam and SIG docs should be watching these a little bit more closely and going like a little bit above and beyond to reach out to people, like start reaching out on Slack instead of just GitHub comments. If something actually misses the deadline, then we clear the milestone on GitHub, the 1.30 milestone, and it will get pulled on the next build. The whole enhancement will be gone.
And so it sounds like it's not necessarily subjective. It's either there or it's not.
Correct. There is no middle ground.
So we're talking enhancements. Let's keep on going. We'll go to KEP. So first of all, when you talk about enhancements, right? And I looked, there was 92 on the list last night. How does that work? So you've got a release 3 times a year.
Yep.
Then enhancements are net new code or its updates. Is that correct?
Yeah. So an enhancement is also referred to as a KEP, Kubernetes enhancement proposal. And a KEP is this really, really long document that describes what your enhancement to Kubernetes is. Its risks, its requirements, what stage it's at, when you expect to graduate it from like alpha, beta, stable. There's a production readiness review questionnaire in there for determining its risk to the rest of Kubernetes. And this is a fairly involved process. We've had them for a few years now, but it is better than when we didn't have them. But yeah, KEPs can live for a very, very long time. They don't always we don't ship a new feature and then the KEP is gone. We keep building on that KEP so that anytime that feature needs some kind of work, there's an update to it, or we're just graduating it from alpha to beta, that all happens within the same KEP. And within a release... So
that would be like Go? Would that be an example of one that you keep adding on to?
No, Go is not part of Kubernetes, so it doesn't get a KEP.
Okay.
I can speak on one specifically because it's interesting and I know the KEP number off the top of my head. This release, we merged one of the oldest KEPs in the process, in the project. KEP 0024 is AppArmor support. And that KEP has just been kind of like rotting, like languishing for like years. It's just sitting there, but all it does is add AppArmor support to Kubernetes. But it's features to Kubernetes, not dependencies. Like Go is a dependency.
Okay.
So it doesn't need a KEP.
Okay, so you've got these KEPs, and then as you go through, you're figuring out which ones of these are sort of deferred, et cetera. So how many live KEPs do you have at this point, if I'm using that correctly?
Well, let's go look. I think we've got like 40 something in this release.
Okay.
And
is that a typical number? Do you usually have are they usually 30 to 40, or some have 50, or?
This is not an unusually large amount, or I mean, this is about average. Like sometimes we'll see like some scary numbers. I get nervous around like 60. That's where it starts feeling like a lot to me, but it's not actually an absurd number. Let me go look at the project board myself.
So does it start like at 60 or 90 and through attrition things fall off?
Yeah, so we lose stuff at every phase of the release. So we started with 90 something, 92, but there are two deadlines that very commonly knock them out. So there's enhancements freeze and code freeze. Enhancements freeze is the deadline to have your KEP opted into the release, which requires approval, not just from the KEP owner to say, yes, I would like to opt this in, but from the SIG lead. So each KEP is kind of exists within the area of a SIG. So SIG auth might own a whole bunch of KEPs. And one of the chairs or tech leads from SIG auth will have to opt in that KEP. So we lose a lot there where like the SIG leads don't actually opt in, or the SIG lead does opt in, but the KEP owner is like, I don't actually have time to work on this. And that's where things get like removed from milestone or deferred. At code freeze, we lose a lot.
So it's decentralized, and so the people making the call are the SIGs. So if you have, I don't know, 92, then there's a certain number of SIGs that have underneath them certain number of KEPs. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got like 44. I had to go, the board looks a little bit, you can't track by status, track for code freeze right now, because after code freeze, the docs subteam starts using that field. So it will say tracked for docs freeze for some of them, but we've got like 42 in this release.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So as you said, you came up with if you're ever a release lead, you would be Kubernetes. So how does that begs the question, how did you become a release lead?
So
what does it mean to be a release lead?
The release lead is like the chief cat herder.
Oh, that's why you have the name Cat and why you have the cat in the box.
Yeah. So it's actually they only pick people whose name is Kat or Kate or Katie or Catherine or something like that.
But you could be a C or it could be a K, right?
Yeah. Because we need to be able to make jokes about it. That's actually like a critical part of the project, and you can see it in the steering committee charter. It requires that. Oh yeah.
I missed it the first time around, but I'll go back and I'll highlight it in the notes for the podcast.
No, what actually happens is, so I've been involved in Kubernetes for a very, very long time, and I've been on the Kubernetes release team for about 3 years. And you kind of just be reliable for an extended period of time. I have shadowed docs and comms, and I have led both docs and comms. I have also been a release lead shadow twice. And so that means I have like pretty broad experience with the communication and leadership aspects of the Kubernetes release process. And that is what is required for the release lead.
So shadows, right? Is that like an understudy? Are you like an assistant? Are you
kinda, actually? So the release team is made up of 5 subteams. Each subteam has a lead and a number of shadows, typically 4, but you can take as many shadows as you feel you can manage. There's no official minimum or maximum on that. And part of the subteam leads, like say the docs lead's job, is to train somebody to replace them.
Okay.
They lead the team, make sure the work gets done. There are usually a few tasks that are only done by the lead because they require elevated access to the project repositories. But part of that job is to train a replacement. And typically you shadow twice before you lead a sub-team, though there are exceptions. I only shadowed docs once before I led it. The release lead shadows are a little bit different in that they kind of have to get their fingers into everything. So if a sub-team loses a shadow for whatever reason, they're removed or they have to step back because their real job that pays their bills starts taking up too much time, you can send one of your lead shadows in to replace that sub-team shadow. So you want that flexibility in a release lead shadow, the ability to just kind of like pick up in the middle of another team's work and just do it. And that's how I ended up where I am. I did it several times. I instituted some pretty sweeping changes to the way the release team works, and SIG release leadership liked that. Myself and Grace, who's my emeritus advisor right now, put into place the documentation and policies that allow us to remove inactive shadows or inactive sub-team leads, which we previously didn't have, and it had been a problem before.
You haven't had any problems with that, have you?
I have not had any problems with that. I have not. No, I have. I had to remove 3 shadows this cycle. And
so the shadows, there's also, you were talking the other day about interns. Is that something completely different?
Yeah, so you're probably thinking of the LFX interns. We do not get any LFX mentees or interns or whatever. That's not part of the release process. They do sometimes work with the release management half of SIG release. So SIG release is 2 parts. There is a release management subproject and a release team subproject. I am currently leading a release. Release management handles the technical aspects of releasing Kubernetes. So they type the commands and push the buttons that actually like builds it after we've collected everything. And sometimes they get an LFX mentee, but we really don't. Okay. There are a lot of students on the release team, but we don't select for them. It's not like officially a mentorship opportunity. And while we've certainly had some like truly exceptional students come through the release team, I think that it is a huge amount of work and a huge amount of responsibility. And the overwhelming majority of students are not suited for it unless they're already used to the project. People tend to want to like use the release team, since it is an open application process, to shadow on a sub team as a way to like get their foot in the door to contributing to Kubernetes. But I don't think it is a good place to start.
A lot of people probably don't know, as you're saying, don't realize what they're getting into, and then just decide, well, I'm just going to go silent and not worry about it.
Yeah, that happens a lot. And it's like, it is a massive amount of work. And in order to really excel on the release team, and also to not be miserable on the release team, you need to know how the project works. You need to have an understanding of how the SIGs interact with each other and who's leading those SIGs and where to find information. And brand new people to the project don't have that context. So it's unnecessarily difficult for them. Yeah.
So then, okay, so back to you. You've been involved for about 3 years. You shadowed. You were the docs lead, and then you now are the release lead. And I think you said that it's not necessarily. It's not if you're the docs person, then you become the release lead, or the X person. It's not like most people come from a certain discipline or a certain area. Is that correct?
Most people come from enhancements, actually.
Okay.
I'm the first release lead in a long time who's never been on the enhancements sub team. I have led both the docs team and the communications team, but I've never been on enhancements. So that's a little bit unusual. I don't think it should be. It's just that enhancements is like the flashiest team. It's the flashiest sub team. It's the one people want to be on. And I never applied for it. Didn't care.
Sometimes it's just the dependable ones that you just go in, you put in the time, and that's the things that really matter to make things, because docs are important and everyone forgets about them.
As long as you like consistently do the work, you show up and you don't need a lot of hand holding, and you are sure of yourself and actively looking to improve our processes, you've got a decent shot of eventually being asked to be the release lead. It's about like consistency, reliability, and independence matter a lot. And it's a stressful process. It's like you get nominated by the previous release lead, and you don't have to be currently a release lead shadow to be eligible. So like I was leading docs when I was asked to lead 130. But you get nominated by the current release lead, and they have to get approval from SIG release So you have to kind of think of it as like an actual company org chart. Like right now I have 9 direct reports with like 30-ish people under them. And my boss is the SIG release co-chairs.
Okay.
So
like the board of directors? I don't know if that would work.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Well, so then speaking of companies, then when you go to do this, you need to make sure that your company is supportive, right?
Correct.
Because if they weren't, you get involved and halfway through they say, no, we need you on this project here. So when you're at Dell now, as am I. Before that, when you've been there for 3 years. So what other companies were you at? Were they supportive?
Yeah, I was at Pulumi before this. And when you're just shadowing a sub team, it's actually not that bad. When you're shadowing a sub team, I don't think you need to involve your employers at all.
Okay.
When I was a docs shadow and a comms shadow, like on a busy week, outside of like 1 or 2 meetings, it was like maybe 2 hours of work or less. It's like shadowing is really not that involved on most teams. Release signal is very busy, but if you're on docs or comms or enhancements, you're not spending enough time that it's like significantly impactful to your day job. If you are leading a sub team, that can be where you want to inform your employer. If you are leading the release, it is required that you inform your employer. You need your employer's buy-in. Fortunately, Dell gave me permission to do this. So this is most of my job right now, because it is like 30 or 40 hours a week of meetings and tracking things and chasing people down for 16 straight weeks.
Yeah, like you said, it's sort of cat herding.
It is. So, but Dell gave me permission to do it, and very nearly wiped my calendar for the quarter so that I could do it. And we require that for release leads in general.
Yeah, because otherwise it could be nervous breakdown, right? If all of a sudden they said you have the time, and then say, just joking, we got this really big thing due, and so you got to spend a week doing it. So stop that for a while. That wouldn't work out well. So with the cast of people involved, you said you've been involved for 3 years. How much of it is the same old folks? How many new folks are you getting coming through? Is there a graying of the group, or is it always new folks and other people like yourself burnt out and saying, I'll never do it again? I'm just kidding.
So we want people to graduate out of the release team. We don't want to see people like chilling in the release team for years. If I hadn't been selected to lead this release, I would have stepped back from the release team, because I've been doing it for too long, and people shouldn't stay in the release team as long as I have, so usually they graduate to different roles. They find other ways to contribute to SIG release. If they want to stay in SIG release, I will be staying in SIG release, though I can't announce doing what until after the release comes out.
Well, don't you become emeritus like you're emeritus person?
I do become an emeritus, but you don't usually serve as the emeritus advisor for the release immediately following yours. So I will probably be the emeritus advisor for 1.32, but I will have a shiny new role that will be announced at Open Source Summit North America.
Which is on the 12th or something, maybe in a week or so?
It's in like 2.5 weeks. Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, yeah. I'm waiting with bated breath.
You'll find out then. But yeah, like people graduate out of it. We don't want people sticking around for too long. Like obviously I do know a lot of the people on the release team currently, but usually like 60% of the shadows are people that I don't know. We are by far the SIG with the most help, which is unfortunate because the other SIGs need way more help than we do. When we open the shadow application for a release, we get hundreds of applicants for 25 spots.
And so how do you vet that to make sure that these shadows are not flaky folks and they really are committed?
So there is we can't guarantee it. Obviously, that is not something we can completely control for. There is a trick question on the shadow application that it absolutely blows my mind that people mess this up. But each role has a handbook. When you fill out the shadow application, there is a link to the handbooks. And one of the questions is, have you read the handbook? If you answer no to that, you are not getting selected. And
Well,
people answer no.
That
People
seems like
answer
kind
no
of
to it
an
all the
easy one
time.
to figure out. I mean,
Yeah,
yes or no. Okay.
but people put no there all the time. There's also like we have a weekly release team meeting where we have to provide status updates to me, your boss, right? And then a little bit further in the release, we start doing daily burn downs, two of which are like live meetings and the other two are asynchronous. And one of the questions on the shadow application is, can you attend meetings? And if you select no, I can't attend any of them. It's like, yes, I can attend most or all. Yes, when I don't have work conflicts, or no, I can't attend meetings. The first two are fine. It's okay for you to like miss the meeting occasionally for work conflicts. Totally cool. Just tell your sub team lead about it. If you say no, I can't attend any meetings, you're also not going to get selected. That's a requirement. And we do have like an APAC friendly time zone meeting as well. So like,
well, that's good that you have it and people are willing to be honest. Because what you obviously don't want is people say, yes, I'll be at every meeting. And then that's the last you ever hear.
And then they're never there. Yeah. But otherwise, like the shadow application includes a lot of questions about like your experience in the Kubernetes project itself, your experience in open source in general. Like what do you do for work? Why do you want to be involved in this sub team specifically? And we use that information to kind of pick people. We also use information, if you've been on the release team before, from your previous sub-team leads. So when I'm selecting shadows, if I see that you have been on the release team before, I will go talk to not only your previous sub-team lead, but your fellow shadows. Anybody who has worked with you, I will go ask. If you tell me that you work in SIG Node, but you've never been in the release team at all, I'm going to go talk to SIG Node and
you
find out.
References, which would make sense.
Yeah, I don't think everybody is that thorough, but I like to be.
Well, I think it behooves you to do that because otherwise you are kind of out there twisting in the wind if a lot of people don't do what they're supposed to. So I think that makes sense. So with this release, how typical is it? Is it bigger, more complicated, less complicated? We're at 1.30. So how does it compare, do you think?
Well, knock on wood, on my particle board desk, that counts as wood. This release has been very smooth so far. We had some hiccups early in the release, but they were caught very early before the public noticed. So nothing to worry about from like an outside of the release team, outside of SIG release perspective. I don't really expect any drama.
You said you don't expect it, and so now
I don't expect
it's gonna be horrible.
But of course, yeah. We've just cut release candidate 0, so there is a release candidate available for testing now, and by I don't know how long it takes you to publish these. The release itself might be out, but it's been low drama. There haven't been major technical hiccups. There aren't any KEPs that look particularly scary or dangerous to me. We had one regression after cutting the first release candidate, but it was also caught immediately and nothing else has come up so far. So,
and you probably said this, but to get included, say I'm XYZ company and I've got something that helps my company, but really not a lot of people. How do I get in? Do you say, well, as long as it works and you're doing your duty to make sure it gets in and doesn't screw other things up, it's okay? Or how do you, is that where one of the SIGs votes on it?
PR is welcome, baby. We're an open source project.
So the more the merrier. Come on in, water's fine.
Yeah, I mean, your KEP might not get approved. You might get some pushback. People might hate your code implementation, but like there aren't any, we don't have any barriers in place to prevent people representing companies from contributing. Like a ton of the Kubernetes code base was written by people representing companies. So we don't care as long as you follow the process and communicate with us and don't like demand to have your KEP included, then you'll be fine. You'll be fine. just
and you heard it here first. Kat said it was fine. So that's
that's you can put that in the Kat said it was fine.
Exactly. And you put the little cat in the box, and it's you mentioned I can't remember, but anyway. So just circle back to go back bigger. You were at KubeCon in Paris. You had your couple of talks. Was there, what were some of the things that just in general stuck out for you in the conference, or were you just so maniacally focused on everything released that you had no idea there was anything outside of that?
Well, so the first day, day 0, I was at the contributor summit. So I was very focused on hanging out with friends that I only get to see once or twice a year. Day 1 of the conference, I gave both of those talks. So that day 1 completely shot for me. Like there was no chance of me seeing any other aspect of the conference. The rest of the conference, by the time I got to the conference itself, the news about Redis going closed source was public. I found out much earlier in the conference, in the middle of the night at a park, hanging out with people after hours.
As you do.
But as you do, and when in Paris.
Yes, that's right. Learn about closed source. An opening source, yes.
So there was a little bit of chatter and drama about the Redis thing, and of course a lot of speculation that the Linux Foundation were immediately going to pull another open tofu, and they did. It's called Valkey, which is cute. So it's supposed to be a reference to the word Valkyrie.
That's what I was thinking. It's like
like Norse battle maidens.
I think of Apocalypse Now and the Robert Duvall and surfing soldiers. But I digress.
So there was a lot of speculation about that turned out to be true. They announced it yesterday. That was pretty fun. The opinion of myself personally, the keynotes were very, very, very heavily AI focused. And
it was AI. I'm sorry. What does that stand for? I haven't heard of that.
They're very heavily focused on AI, and the AI/ML track at KubeCon was given the keynote stage for all of their talks during the day after the keynotes were over. However, I peeked in there a couple of times, and there was maybe like 50 people in those talks. So the vibe of the attendees generally was that, like, while the companies care quite a lot about AI and ML, the actual practitioners don't. I think that there's a lot of them express that, like, I'm not like technically equipped to do this work. Like this kind of work requires a degree of specialization that I and the overwhelming majority of other engineers simply don't have. So it's not actually relevant to most practitioners. So hopefully we see, like, KubeCon is an event for practitioners. That's what it's for. So hopefully we see a little bit of a return to a focus on what practitioners want and can do, because it's not data science, right? Like
yes. Well, so now you talked about practitioners, but also I know you get people who are business folks who just sort of heard about this Kubernetes things and come on in. You've got, say, DevOps, you got operations, you've got developers, you've got business folks, students.
The DevOps folks are still practitioners. They're just not necessarily Kubernetes administrators. I would say they're still practitioners, but like the business folks, the sales folks, they're there to sell to the practitioners or to try to get meetings with people like me. And I don't mind that, but they're not the majority. The Linux Foundation or the CNCF will release a transparency report, usually within 2 or 3 months of an event, that includes like a full breakdown of who the attendees were by like age, gender, job title, that kind of stuff. And it's interesting to look at the difference between like North America and Europe, and especially over time. But you'll see that like biz dev and sales type people are definitely in the minority. It's usually like practitioners, individual contributors, and like technical decision makers.
Yeah, and I've noticed too, if you sit down at lunch or dinner and talk to folks, you've got folks who are pretty deep in it, plus folks who are, say, in operations saying, my boss told me I needed to learn more about this. I gotta figure out what this whole Kubernetes thing is. So, now, if just so that we'll off with you making a plea for telling people how to get involved with this. But other than that, have I missed anything? Anything you'd like to say? Are you going to tell us about the Funko Pop behind you?
Oh,
the other shoulder, yeah.
Other shoulder. Oh, this is Piccolo. From Dragon Ball Z. I got him in a grab bag.
Not Pickle Rick, but
not Pickle Rick. That's an award that is not relevant to the conversation, but it is a Kubernetes contributor award.
See it. It's the little steering wheel or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Stormtrooper kind of guy?
No, this is my Doom Guy helmet.
Oh, see, that's what I meant. It was Doom Guy helmet. I didn't know.
Yeah,
that looks nice.
It's wearable. So, sometimes that's fun to put on in meetings.
And then you got the flashing lights. I mean, you got a lot going on there. It screams fun and legit. So
well, this is my little gamer cave.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
What about the painting behind you? And with the yellow and all that stuff?
Oh, that's not a painting. That is, I'll have to grab the box, which means I have to get another Funko Pop off the top of it. But it's a Gundam figurine that I haven't built.
Is that an anime?
Yes. But it's a big robot.
Oh my gosh. That is pretty cool.
Yeah. They're rad. You have to build them piece by piece. This one, when I bother to build it, will probably take me 150, 200 hours to build.
Zoinks. So these aren't Legos. Yeah. These are like little pieces, like regular models that you put together, like the old days.
Yeah, but they're teeny and very involved. And this one is a perfect grade, which is the most difficult to build of these. That was released, I don't know, 15 years ago. I bought it on eBay.
And you've been working on it for 15 years?
No, I'm terrified to build it because it's my favorite Gundam and it's my favorite model of that Gundam. And they haven't made this in so long that I'm scared. I'm scared to open it. Because then you can't sell it, right? It's like all the people have the stuff in the shrink wrap that they can't. It's not the selling it. I'm afraid of screwing it up. I can't buy replacement parts for it. Like some of the other ones I have, like the one that was behind it, are newer, and I can get replacement parts for them if I like break something. I can't for this one. I'd be out of luck.
I would. Are you familiar with Parasite? Not the from the anime.
The Parasite. Anime with the guy with the parasite in his hand.
Yes. Did you see next week they're releasing a live action version of it, and it's a director out of Korea who is doing it, and it looks really faithful, and it looks really scary. I watched the whole series with my son, the animated version, the original one, and yeah, this one looks like pretty intense.
Is it coming out on Netflix or what?
Yes.
Okay.
April 5th. So we don't know when this is going to go live. So maybe before or after, but yeah, very excited about that.
Thank you. I will absolutely watch that. I liked Parasite. So.
This one is Parasite Gray. The other one was Parasite Magnum, maybe something like that. I can't remember, but I digress. So just to end with, we got Gundam, we got Parasite, we talked about Funko Pops, Pickle Rick, and Pickle whatever that one is. Yeah. And so what if people want to get involved, what would you say?
I would say that if you are all
run, it's not too late.
Don't do it. It's not worth it, bro. Exactly. Open source burnout is real.
I used to have hair on the side of my head and it all fell out.
It fell right out. I used to go outside. I haven't touched grass in months.
But they tell you it's still there, right?
They tell me it's there, but that's actually just because I live in Scotland and it's been raining for a year and a half.
It rains in Scotland?
It does. Yeah, you know that.
Yes.
But
been there, done that.
I would say if you are already involved in the Kubernetes project in other areas, then maybe come check out SIG release and apply to Shadow. If you are not already involved in Kubernetes, but you know what Kubernetes is and or you use it day to day, there may still be a place for you in SIG release. We have other work that needs getting done. We just I just don't think that it is the easiest way to get involved in the project. If you want to get involved in the project in an easy way that is extremely impactful, please go talk to SIG docs. Please.
You're not biased
whether,
there?
No.
Having come from there?
Maybe a
this
little.
This is brought
but
to you
like,
by SIG docs.
Okay, yeah, I'll record an ad for them. No, I mean, I am biased, but also genuinely it is like chronically understaffed. It is definitely one of the biggest bottlenecks in the release process. The docs deadlines where we require approval from SIG docs are always rough because there's only like 5 or 6 approvers for SIG docs, and that sucks. And I'm one of them, to be clear. Like it's me, the chairs, the tech leads, and then there's like 3 other people that can approve. And that's a huge bottleneck. We need more people reviewing documentation for like technical accuracy, for grammatical accuracy in English and any other language you can think of. I think
how many languages is it translated into, or is it just depending on if you have somebody who's in that language who's willing to take it on?
It depends on if you have somebody in that language. The only localization subteam that is not understaffed is Hindi. So if you speak literally any other language fluently, you absolutely can be helpful in SIG docs. English always needs help just by like virtue of the huge amount of documentation we have to process at a single time in English. Hindi could probably still use the help, but it is the most well-staffed of the localization subteams. Literally any other language needs
Hawaiian?
Help.
You got a Hawaiian group there?
I don't think so. Do you speak Hawaiian?
It's a dead language, but everybody uses this part of your speech in Hawaiian. But no, they're trying to bring it back. In fact, they've established a school where you speak nothing but Hawaiian because they're trying to revive it. But it's one that's been had gone through the wayside. But you use, as I said, certain words in your
it's like turned into a pidgin language, sort of like kind of mashed with English.
There's a whole thing about that pidgin. In fact, they tried to make that an official language of Hawaii, pidgin, which is all the different. You've got Japanese, Chinese, Haoles, you've got Hawaiians, and so there's definitely that. And then there's pure Hawaiian, which is something that hasn't been around legitimately, and they also have to then make up new words like from things that you wouldn't have: airplane, transistor, radio, things like that. So, but I digress.
Well, I hope that works out, and then maybe we can let Hawaii be its own kingdom again.
That's right. So, fun fact to know and tell, and I kind of just gave it away, or you just gave it away, but there's only 2 states that can fly their flags the same height as the American ones, and those 2 are
Hawaii and probably Texas.
Yes, right? She shoots, she scores. Yeah, because they're the ones who are their own countries.
Yeah.
So Hawaii was a country, then a republic, then a territory, and then a state, if I've got those in the right order.
Yeah.
So, but that's your Hawaiian history for today. So any link people should go to for the docs?
Ooh, yeah, you can just go to github.com/Kubernetes and then the community repository. There will be a subfolder in there for SIG docs, but the best place to get a hold of the SIG docs folks is actually on Slack. Join the Kubernetes Slack, go to the SIG docs channel, and somebody, possibly me, will happily point you in the right direction of where you can be most helpful. You are welcome to like informally review documentation for grammar or technical accuracy at any time, whether you're officially involved in the SIG or not. But if you want to get officially involved, we can talk you through what's required there and get you on the roster for being an issue wrangler or a PR wrangler.
Well, cool. We'll have to put a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah.
And with that, Kat Cosgrove, it's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much. And on behalf of me and the sock puppet.
You're so welcome, Barton. It's a treat as always.